Kwame Nkrumah, the Asajifo, the Redeemer, the dictator of Ghana, lies in the dust, a children's foot on his face. That is the lesson of this week's coup d'etat in Ghana. It's been a remarkable revolution, one of the most remarkable in Africa for a number of reasons. For one thing, the realization that he was utterly detested by just about everyone in Ghana. And the feeling of complete liberation that greeted one on arrival in Accra after the coup. When Ghana became independent in 1957, Britain's first colony to do so, it carried with it the hopes of Africa for a new and free Africa. Those hopes were turned into bitter disappointments by Nkrumah and led many people to believe that Africa and democracy didn't go together. What happened last Thursday has, to some extent anyway, redressed that balance and given Ghana the chance for a fresh start.
A popular revolution, the end of a regime whose opponents had been shut away in prison by the hundred. Now, in the turbulent hours after last Thursday's takeover, the crowds wait for Nkrumah's victims to be freed, and for the men who'd supported him to take their turn in Fort Usher jail. In the two-way traffic of liberation, some are luckier than others. Many of Nkrumah's supporters got away, others had no chance. Into the cells go the ex-Redeemer's ministers. With them, at gunpoint, go scores of MPs and officials of Nkrumah's Convention People's Party. Out into the sunshine, the first of the 2,000 freed so far. Their crime, political opposition to Nkrumah. Their sentence, anything up to 10 years without formality of trial. Among those released, young men eager to fight on for the new Ghana, and old men just glad to be free. The men who set them free carried out a textbook revolution, carefully planned, swiftly executed, completely successful. Among Europeans who saw it happen was a former British colonial servant who stayed on to help Ghana after independence. Mr. James Moxon tells of the dawn takeover.
Firing started, I think, about 5 o'clock in the morning and intensified as the morning went on. And of course, as I lived just outside Flagstaff House, and that was one of the main centers of resistance, particularly from the security people, of course we had quite a lot of bullets flying around.
The first I heard of it was walking along the corridor to go down to breakfast, and the news came over one of the radios in the bedrooms. I didn't actually hear the announcement, but some of the cleaning staff in the corridor heard it and immediately expressed, to my mind, great delight, and then immediately rushed up and told me about it.
What did they say?
I think they said, we're free, no more president, no more Nkrumah.
But did, in fact, the troops surround the airport and take it over?
Oh, well, this was announced on the radio, and of course they did. One of the announcements said that the airport had been closed for traffic and had been taken over, surrounded by the troops, just as a security measure.
Troops still guarded the airport when Reporting 66 team flew in the next day, but everything was already under control.
Well, the new council have described it by saying that he seemed to act as though Ghana was his personal property, which perhaps amounts to the same sort of thing. But these sort of feelings tend to build up, and I think people appear to be ready for a change of government. And of course, in this type of government, the only way you can get a change of government is by overthrow.
The overthrow of Nkrumah brought public jubilation in Accra, in sharp contrast to Ghana's near neighbour, Nigeria. When the army took over there in January, there was simply a stunned acceptance by the public. Nothing like this. Outside Fort Usher prison, the crowd are waiting for the release of more of Nkrumah's political prisoners.
What did you have mainly against Kwame Nkrumah?
Because he has taken our money away, over 195 million pounds away, and we are now broke.
Oh,
we are fed up with him. We are fed up. Yes.
What is the lady waiting for?
Well, is happy.
Is happy.
Answering the question I said before. He's very, very happy.
Are you happy too?
I'm very happy.
Look, if my brother is in the jail yard now. I'm waiting for my brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long has he been detained?
About 3 years or 5 years. 5 years. 5 years.
What was he detained for?
For political reason. And I don't know what my brother has done. What he has done.
He was detained because he was a political opponent of Nkrumah.
Of Nkrumah, of course, yes.
Among the released men this day, Mr. Kobla Atto, former publicity secretary of the Band United Party.
Mr. Atto, when were you arrested and for what reason?
10th November 1958. And the government declared reasons were that we were planning the forceful overthrow of the government. But the real reason was that this was the first time that you had a real opposition in Accra against the government party. And they were afraid we were going to beat them in Accra. And they thought they must do something about it. And the only way they could do it was to remove us from among the people.
How many of the members of your party were put in jail?
There were 42 of us. Actually, there were to be 43, but one man was not arrested at all. And one old man among us died when we were in detention. That was in 1960 he died.
What sort of treatment did you have?
The treatment varied. At first, we were treated fairly well. Then, in 1960, when the government decided that they have to break up our party in Ashanti, where also we have strong and widespread support, they declared that some people were engaged in gangsterism and they were criminals. And when they arrested the people, they turned out to be mostly members and officials of our party, especially chiefs and traditional men in Ashanti who were chairmen of our party in the various villages. They were treated very brutally. They were beaten up. Some of them were more than 70 years, and even there were 2 or 3 who were more than 80. They were beaten. They were often stripped naked and searched.
This is on arrival in the prison?
Oh, yes. On the first arrival, in the reception room, they were slapped and beaten, kicked. And then from there, they were hurried along, pushed or beaten to the cells. And from time to time, the doors were opened and they were beaten, abused, and humiliated in all manner of ways.
From prison conditions in Accra, 130 miles north now, to another symptom of Nkrumah's regime, a training camp for African saboteurs, a closely guarded secret up till last Sunday, when the new regime opened the gates to the world's press. Until that day, even the local police hadn't been allowed in. The students inside were never allowed out.
This is a freedom fighters camp which was set up by the Kwame Nkrumah government and has been today opened to the press by the new government of Ghana. It had before, about 6 months ago, about 11 Chinese instructors. They're not here today. It also had Ghanaian instructors and recruits from various African countries. Countries like South Africa and Rhodesia with so-called colonial governments. But it also had recruits from countries, independent African countries, neighbors of Ghana in some cases. The inference of today's visit is that the new Ghana government doesn't intend to follow the old policies of President Nkrumah, which they would consider to be interfering in one's neighbors' affairs and trying to subvert other African states.
20 trainee saboteurs were found here. They said they'd been lured from neighboring countries with the promise of scholarships, then taught Chinese communist doctrine, guerrilla tactics, and the use of explosives. Could it happen again in Ghana? What are the chances of Nkrumah now staging a comeback from Guinea?
I think he'd be very unwise to try, because I don't think he'd be well received. The public opinion has manifested itself very quickly in the last 2 or 3 days.
As being against him?
Yes, the public opinion has manifested itself as being against some of the policies which have affected the public. I mean, in certain respects, of course, his policies are Ghanaian policies, but in certain respects, particularly in relation to the economic situation, I think people felt that too much money had been spent on prestige, symbols, and perhaps too little on keeping the cost of living within bounds. This is the sort of thing that worries the man in the street.
Ghana's future may now depend on released United Party prisoners like Mr. Atto.
There's no vacuum in nature, and the same in human affairs. So I shall certainly be in politics. As a matter of fact, people have been telling me and many of my friends that they expect us to do better than these people, and I don't think we're going to disappoint them.
What sort of Ghana would you yourself work for now?
I have been brought up in ideas of British democracy, and before I went to prison, the people I associated with were people who thought the same, and I'm sure that they still hold those views. If you ask me what sort of ism I believe in, I say I believe in kind of socialism like that of the British Labour Party. And that is the opinion, the views of the members of the UP. And I think that's what they like. They won't have anything to do with anything called communism. They hate it. In the prison, anybody was a UP member hated communism. And we wouldn't have it at all.
General, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
Sandy Gall, Independent Television News, London. When approximately do you expect free elections to be held in Ghana?
Oh, that is too early to answer. As you know, within this week, general election can only be carried out after we've got as I said, we've got the Constitution. I mean, this Constitution, we don't want to have a dictatorship again, and therefore the Constitution will come out when everybody in the country has been given the privilege to bring about what he thinks must be embodied in the Constitution, and the Constitution has been referred to on a referendum and probably approved by the Council.
General Ankara's first priority must be to rescue Ghana from bankruptcy.
General, it's been said that this country is going to run out of money by April. What do you intend to do about that? Are you going to ask for aid from the United States?
It's within the Economic Commission.
Do you expect that you will ask for aid from the United States?
We'll ask for aid from all countries so far.
General, do you plan to reopen diplomatic relations with Britain?